When you take the focus off yourself and put it on someone else and giving out to someone else, it actually probably helped me through my grief.
Hi friends, I'm Caine, and you're listening to the Life and Leadership Podcast, where we share conversations with faith-fueled leaders from all over the globe.
God, I have so much to be thankful for, and even in the midst of my suffering, you are present.
I feel like the next generation are rising and choosing consecration, not deconstruction.
I'm an ambassador. I'm representing another kingdom.
Now, my prayer is that our time together each week activates you to fulfill your God-given purpose and to follow Jesus wholeheartedly as you lead within your particular sphere of influence. Hi friends, well, we've got an extra special conversation for you today, but just before we dive in, I want to ask you to rate this podcast and to leave a review wherever you listen. This really helps other people discover the podcast so that we can see more people stepping into their God-given purpose. Okay, now I've got an awesome guest for you today. I'm being joined by my very dear friend and A21 co-worker, Dr. Rhiannon DuBois. I know you're going to love Dr. Rhi. She is full of wisdom, so let's dive in together today. Okay, one of my favorite people in the world. Rhi, how are you?
Hi, Chris. Great.
Okay,
how are you?
It's awesome. Like now, all my podcast listeners, I'm not sure you've heard two Aussies yet, like with our accents. So
Well, they're in for a treat, Chris.
they're in for a treat. And you're from the particularly refined part of Australia.
No. Okay, are you joking? I'm from Queensland. Okay, you're joking. You're from Sydney. Okay,
thank you. Did I need to say that? It's
Yes.
already started.
Only
exactly.
Australians will understand this. Not North Queensland, but yeah.
No. She's like, let's just talk really honestly. Do Queenslanders and New South Wales people love each other in football?
No, they do not. They do not at all. So there's rivalry.
There's rivalry, which is why we began right there. I had to begin in that sense. And so Rhi, of course, I love on so many levels. One of the major ones is she oversees all of our global aftercare for A21, which is no small job. And, I want you to tell us a little bit about where you are. Obviously, you've landed here. You're in America now. You oversee all of A21's global aftercare. But you didn't just wake up one day and here you are.
No.
There was a bit of a backstory.
There was a journey. I never would have thought, Chris, I'm living in Texas.
No, I'm trying not to laugh. Like only or like, what do you call it? The Sunshine Coast, a Sunshine Coast girl.
Is like the tourist destination of Australia. It's beautiful.
She's on the beach. She grew up
Beaches, I would run by the beach most days. And now I'm living in Texas.
And there's no beach there where you live,
is there? There's no beach, and it's so hot, Chris. It's like 105 degrees outside.
Anyway, there's cowboy boots, and there's rodeos, whatever you call them.
Yeah, I always say the wrong thing.
Me
rodeos?
Too. Yeah, I guess I'm not American, so
I always say rodeo, but it's like it's more rodeo drive.
I know.
Anyway.
Oh, exactly. See, this.
That's where I'll start.
Let's go back to your background.
Okay. Background story. I did grow up on a farm in Australia, actually, in the outback. Yes. So I somewhat fit in Texas a little bit, but we'll gloss over that. So I am a clinical psychologist. I did a doctorate in clinical psychology at the University of Queensland. So it's straight after grade 12, my senior year in high school.
Hang on, Rhi. Does Queensland have universities?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Here we go. This is going to continue. Okay. Where did you go? The University of Sydney, like the best in Australia. Yeah.
I just wanted to drop that in, but just hashtag humble.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay,
so I did a year of Bible college after grade 12. We had this thing in our church, like give God a year. So it was more... It was leadership college.
I like that.
It was great. And at the time, Chris, you were coming and preaching in my youth ministry.
Yeah,
I still remember.
What she's trying to tell everyone right now is that I'm much older than her. That was what that was. Keep going.
I was like 16. Okay.
Yes.
So I did a doctorate in clinical psychology, and then after uni, I went and worked in private practice straight away. So I did 9 years work in private practice as a clinical psychologist on the Sunshine Coast. And during that time, the clinic grew from just me and my boss at the time, and we grew it to quite a big clinic on the coast. And I started managing it because he started traveling all over the world and speaking. So I was acting clinical director there and supervising a team of psychologists, which was awesome. So I had a leadership role there. But part of my story is I got married at 26. And 2.5 years into marriage, my ex-husband just walked out on me one night with no explanation.
Unbelievable.
So it was just like this huge shock I was 29 at the time. He was working out on the cross trainer in our home gym in the garage and said, I think I want to put the house on the market. And I was like, but I love this house. And then he said, I think we need to take a good look at where this relationship is going. And I'm like, this relationship, like this marriage that we've been in for 2.5 years? You know, he's on the cross trainer. And then I was thinking like maybe babies would be the obvious next step. I'm 29. And he said, I'm not happy. It's not you. I'm leaving. And I remember just sliding down the wall of the garage, like, what on earth is happening? And if you knew my ex-husband, you knew that he was serious. Like, he wasn't messing around. Like, when he made up his mind, he made up his mind. So I begged, I cried, I did everything. I was like, you made an oath. Like, I was just in such a state of shock. That was a Sunday. I went to work the next 2 days. I don't know why. Yeah. I think I was just in this state of shock, and I had clients. I felt like I've got this responsibility. But I went to work the next day, didn't tell anyone. I would do things a lot differently now, but no one prepares you for divorce. Right. And I think if we've got any listeners, any women or men who have gone through divorce, it's like we did pre-engagement counselling. You do pre-engagement or pre-marriage counselling, but no one tells you how to actually go through a divorce. And the shame of it all too. So
especially because you're a person of, you're a Christian, so you're not you don't get married planning for divorce. That's why no one helps you through it. Yes, it's like of all of the sort of faiths, we are like it's a covenant for life.
Divorce is a no-no. And he had said to me, we will never get divorced. Like, divorce is never an option. And I'd grown up in this church and family were linked in the ministry in the church. So it just came as such a shock for me. No warning signs or anything. So I went to work the next 2 days, came home on the Tuesday, and he had a real estate agent sitting at the dining table. They were putting the paperwork together to sell the house. And then left.
This is unbelievable. Hang on, because someone's going to be listening to this right now as we're talking, or you're talking and going, hang on a minute, you're a clinical psychologist, you're managing a practice. How can you not have known this was coming?
I didn't know, Chris. I know. I know sometimes life just throws you. Throws you for a six. I don't know if that's cricket terminology, but it just came left field.
Like
totally
zero,
blindsided.
there was zero signs at all.
He denied infidelity. Who knows?
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, so you could be even a psychologist and be blindsided, is what I'm asking.
Sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Totally.
Yeah. So I think for anyone who's going through this, who's been in a similar position, whether it's husband just leaving, walking out, or there's infidelity. And I used to counsel so many couples, so many women and men whose spouses had cheated. I was doing marriage counseling for so many couples, and then this happens. Yeah. So he leaves that night, had his bags already packed in the car and just left. And I was like, he was crying and I was comforting him anyway. Sometimes I'm too compassionate.
This is true confessions of a psychologist here. This is what you're getting, yes. Yeah.
And so then I was like, well, what do I do now? So I called my boss and said, I won't be in for the rest of the week. And just left a voice message, called my mum, called my best friend, called my brother. They came over and we sort of just stood around the kitchen table and in shock.
Yeah.
But then I went back to work the next week, the Monday morning, and that year I saw the most clients I ever saw in the 9 years of private practice. I was managing the clinic, supervising 7 staff. So God gave me a grace for it. But Chris, if I'm being honest, I would pack my Clear Eyes and my makeup in my bag.
Man,
because I would get triggered at work and in between clients. I was putting that Clear Eyes in and touching up the makeup. I don't know if that was the best practice in hindsight. Maybe I should have taken a bit more time off. But let's talk reality for when people were going through this. I had a mortgage to pay. I had bills to pay. Yeah, and I know a lot of people going through similar experiences.
I know, and this is what I want this to be practical, because people go, well, in a perfect world, well, I'm just thinking, in your case, you're 29. Thank God you had a job that was paying. Imagine if you were a wife left with 3 kids and there was no income, and suddenly your spouse comes home and says goodbye,
And
kind
that
of thing.
happens to so many people.
So I want this to be practical. It's like, everyone can have, this, and I go, there's a fantasy world and then there's reality where people really live. So that's what we want to give people tools of how we're going to navigate that.
For sure. The idea would have been to go on a 3-month vacation to Italy.
For sure. Absolutely. Ideally, really.
Yes.
With 5 girlfriends who for the first month would have just wallowed in it with you.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
For
Yes.
sure.
Yeah.
I had dreams of the under the Tuscan sunlight. Have you seen that? Where she gets divorced and goes to Italy and renovates the house. Anyway, I was like,
oh, how
I'm
awesome.
do that? Yeah. Never happened.
Right. No, you've got to work and pay a mortgage.
I had to work, pay a mortgage, and face the practicalities. So that was such a challenging time. I'm so glad I had friends and family who were supportive. But to anyone who's going through that, I want you to know that there's people that can support you. God sees you. And during that time, God was so close to me. And I drew so close to him. Suddenly I had nothing. So all of my stability, or what seemed like my stability, my security in life, because I like home and making a house a home. So I lost my home and my husband in one night. And so it was like, okay, it's you and me, God. We're just going to do this together. And I just felt his presence so close and just drew so close to him through that time.
Which was major. And then what happened? Because you obviously continued, with life. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did have dreams.
Did you think everything was going to be over? Different people navigate different things. I mean, you were in practice. How were you thinking then in terms of your career, your calling, your leadership? You were leading all of those things.
I was leading. Yeah. Thankfully, I had a great team, and my team and my boss were psychologists.
Yes.
So I would go into people's office and they would counsel me, free counseling constantly. So there was never a risk of losing my job. A lot of us at the clinic were Christians, but we weren't a Christian psychology clinic, but we had a reputation for the Christian, Christian psychologists on the Sunshine Coast, and people would drive from Brisbane and an hour away to come to the clinic. So, no, I felt very supported, but there were times where I had couples and clients who knew of my situation. So there was one instance where I was counseling a married couple, and they knew people who knew me and knew of my situation. So I just had to address it and say, let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I am going through a divorce, and have you got any questions? And I think that vulnerability actually helped. Now, typically as a psychologist, you don't share
for sure
your personal stuff, but I knew for this couple that it was important. So yeah, it was embarrassing, it was shameful, but I just had to keep on going. And so there's different types of coping. Like in psychology, we talk about different types of coping. So there's emotion-focused coping, which is allowing yourself to feel the emotion, actually stopping and acknowledging what is it that I'm feeling. Is it anger? Is it sadness? Is it fear? And then working on ways to process that, whether it's talking with girlfriends or journaling, praying. Then there's solution-focused coping or problem-focused coping. So that is looking at, okay, what do I need to do in order to move forward?
Right.
So that might be, for me, that was, I need to go to work, I need to pay the bills. Yeah. But there's other things too, practically, that people have to do, like the single mum now who's finds herself left alone raising kids. She has to take the kids to school. She's got to provide the food, go to work. So we do need to engage in that practical problem-focused coping. And then lastly, there's avoidant coping. So avoidant coping is, I don't want to face this at all. I'm just going to check out, deny the issue. Sometimes with avoidant coping, we see extreme substance use behaviors.
Right.
So drinking, drugs, sometimes there's a bit of binging Netflix or a little bit of retail therapy. It's fine. So it's when it becomes problematic and someone is actually not addressing the issue, that's a concern. But research shows or tells us that both problem-focused coping and emotion-focused coping are the way that we should be handling grief and hardship.
So either or both?
Both, in combination.
Okay, right, got you. Yeah.
So you see people, if a loved one dies and they might organise the funeral and the focus is on planning the funeral and packing up the house, but there's no actual processing the emotion. So all of that is necessary, the practical stuff, but there also needs to be the actually looking at the emotion and grieving and allowing yourself to grieve as well.
My personality would really just love problem-focused counselling the whole time. Because I'm like,
I'm sure it would, Chris.
I'd be like, Ree, tell me the 10 things I need to do now.
Yes.
And just so that we can.
What do I need
but
to
if
do?
you do that without the other, what's the consequence?
So eventually it comes out. It may come out in anger, aggression. It may even come out in some of those avoidant behaviours, like the excessive drinking. So it's like if you just push that emotion down, eventually it's like a volcano. It will come out. Or it's like shaking a can of Coke. If you shake it enough, like it will explode. And so people can go on for a while. And look, I'm going to stereotype here. Men are very good problem solvers and problem-focused copers. So they are typically likely to engage in that more than the emotion-focused coping. It's a generalization, but it's something that
because I would fit into that category too. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah,
and
totally.
some women as well.
Yes, okay.
But, so it's actually allowing yourself. So it's to process the emotion.
Really? So, someone will be going, okay, so what does that mean? Because they'd be like, okay, Ree, if I'm processing this, my marriage fell apart, whatever emotion is coming with that, well, then I'm in a fetal position on the floor for 8 hours and I'm useless. Well, how can that be helpful?
It can be giving yourself structured time. So, Chris, I remember that first day I went back to work.
Yep.
I closed the clinic door behind me after seeing 6 clients and I burst into tears in the car park. It was like, okay, keep it together, keep it together. I went home and I think I got straight into bed and just cried. And I probably lived like that for, I don't know, a few weeks.
Right.
And so there's got to be a mentality of, okay, I can have that time where I process it all and talk to girlfriends or journal. I used to prayer journal a lot, but I need to pull it together at other times.
Right.
You know those times where sometimes I know sometimes I feel like crying, but it's like, I can't today. Or you're having a bad day, you've had a bad morning, you go into the office and you've just got to pull it together. It's like, today's not the day that I air all my dirty laundry and break down in the office.
So you just kept going. And then how did you finally kind of move past that into thinking, I have a future?
Gosh, it probably took 12 months.
Yeah.
To sort of get past the heavy grief. I remember people saying it takes 2 years. Someone else said it takes 5 years to get through a divorce. And
Really?
honestly, it was probably like after 5 years that I was like, okay, I'm good now. But a couple of years to really get through the hard stuff. But yeah, I sort of looked at, I was careful with who I shared my heart with. I would say that to people. And I just found things for me. So even practical things, like I got back into running to release all of that pent-up emotion. I started serving in a different area in church. So I just tried to look at practical things and rebuilding my life. I had to move houses a couple of times. So there was a lot of practical things that I had to do to move forward. But I had to have this hope that I'm going to get through this. But there were times when it was like, God, can you just take me now?
Yeah.
Like,
no,
I don't want
to.
I don't want to live this, because I'd seen so many people go through it in the psychology in my practice, and I was like, I know this is going to take a couple of years of pain, and it's going to take mourning and grieving and lamenting, and there's no way I can avoid that. I can try and avoid it, but it will catch up, and it's not going to be healthy. So I need to actually allow myself to go through that, and a lot of lonely nights, a lot of lonely times. But what I did was I developed plans I call it like an emotional fire escape plan. So typically in a workplace or a school, there's a fire escape plan. We know what to do. We do fire drills for in case of a fire.
Right.
Everyone meet on the oval or something. I sort of put this plan together for myself for what will I do in case of like an emotional fire where I am just feeling like this is too much. So often for me, it was like going to the beach. Yeah. Prayer journaling, going out with a couple of friends, just doing things that would nourish my soul.
Which is awesome. And then you got through, like at what point then did you decide to leave the practice and move to America?
Yeah, it was like 5 years later.
At Trevecca Nazarene University, leadership is more than a skill, it's a calling. The School of Leadership and Interdisciplinary Studies offers cutting-edge programs at the bachelor's, master's, and doctoral levels, all designed to prepare you for a career that impacts your world. In any of the leadership degree programs at Trevecca, you'll be guided by experienced faculty as you build expertise that can prepare you for promotions and new career opportunities. You'll get to know a supportive cohort of classmates who understands you and are working towards similar goals. Best of all, you'll take flexible online classes so you can continue working and prioritizing the things in your life that matter most. Academic excellence is at the heart of Trevecca's mission to educate and equip leaders. That dedication has been recognized by Fortune Education, naming Trevecca's Doctor of Education in Leadership the most affordable online doctorate in education 2024. No matter your field, Trevecca's leadership programs equip you to lead with integrity, creativity, and purpose. Visit trevecca.edu/Christine to get started today.
Wow,
So
so
Chris,
you really went
I
through the
stuck
whole
it
thing.
out.
That's
Yeah,
huge. Yeah,
I
you
did.
practice what you teach.
Yeah. It would have been easier to like just say, I give up because like I'm going to move to Melbourne or move to Italy
Yeah.
or whatever. And I was asking all my married girlfriends, like, hey, what would you do? I think they were a little envious because a lot of them had like little kids at the time. Like,
I'm out.
they were like, Rhea, you could do whatever you want to do right now. So it was like, move to France, move to America or whatever. But at the time I was like, no, I know that at some day I will move,
Right.
but I don't feel like it's right time now. And then a couple of years after my divorce, I felt God say to me that I would move to America. Now, I had never been to America. It was just through quiet time with God. And
That's
so I
not a
had
normal sort of thing for a
No.
Queensland girl to think
Not
about.
at all.
Just so
I
people
was
know.
not like, wow,
Yeah,
America.
Totally.
Like,
It's actually the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, but really, like for most, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I had this knowing in my heart. I didn't share it with many people, just a couple of friends. Like, I think one day I'll move to America. And so then come 2017, 5 years later, I was like, okay, I think it's time to finish up here. I'd been in private practice for 9 years. And so I gave my ex-boss 6 months notice because I was managing the clinic for him. And I had looked into maybe moving to America, but there was no way of me getting here without a visa. So I thought I'll move to Melbourne, which is 2 states south, and I'll open a private practice in the wealthiest suburb in Melbourne, work 3 days a week, and volunteer with refugees like a day a week. And I'm going to focus on me. I'm sick of like managing a clinic and leading and, you know, all of that.
All the things.
All the things. It's time for me. And then 3 months into that 6 months notice, my boss was at a conference with Nick,
Yeah.
your husband, and the position of Global Director of Aftercare had come up, and I get a message saying, hey, Nick Caine wants to know if you're interested in this role of Global Director of Aftercare for A21. It would involve moving to America. And
That's
I was
wild.
like, that's it. And he said to me, I would not have like given you or suggested you to A21 if you hadn't have resigned. So it was just sort of, I look back and I'm like, God was just preparing my heart. And it was a long journey. But I think sometimes in those long journeys of loneliness and like, God, when is it going to come? Like, and I remember just praying like, God, I trust you. I trust you. I don't know what's going to happen, but I feel like there's something else for me.
How did you, because I think people might be wondering, how did you sort of reconcile having no answers? Like, and like, how could God let this happen? And I have no answers. Like my marriage has ended and I mean, I don't know, but as far as I'm aware, it's like I still to this day, I don't know what's going on. How does the obsessive rumination stop? Like,
well,
I'm
I
trying
won't
to
go
even
into all
imagine
my craziness. It's for another time, Chris.
Okay.
But yeah, it did my head in. I think after 12 months, I was like, I need to put this down.
Right.
Because I was trying to find it, like, was there infidelity? What was going on? I never
This
got
is
any
going to help
answers.
people because a lot of people have got stuff where they don't know how to let go because there's no, if someone could just tell them, whether friendship, marriage, relationship, job, but like it could be across any state. But I find a lot of people get really stuck because it is a big one. It's when you just don't know. You think if I just had this answer, I could move forward.
And Chris, I was wanting prophetic words all the time.
Yes, yeah, totally. I get you.
Someone just
I get you.
could just
Yes.
tell me what happened and what's going to happen. Like, I just want some answers. I don't like this uncertainty.
Yeah.
But it was just accepting the unknown.
So that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that alone is going to help someone. I'm hoping that because it could be a friendship, it could be a job thing. Like I just, you know, I was recently in a conversation with someone, it's like, I know nothing will change. It's not going to bring him back or bring her back, but I just want to know, like, what happened? Yeah.
Yeah.
So for you, it's just you've got to, I mean, is there a psychological term for this? Is there something that...
Acceptance.
It's just, yeah.
It's not fancy, but it is the psych term, but it's acceptance. But I went through all of the anger, the frustration, the talking to people, talking to his friend, like, what happened? But in the end, it came to I've just got to accept this and put it down. Because I could have held on to it. I could still be holding on to it 12 years later. But that wouldn't do me any good. It would just start to hurt me.
So would it be like if someone very unexpectedly dies and you're still in your head like, but if they didn't get in that bus and if that didn't happen here or didn't, like, and at some point you've just got to accept.
Yeah, God, I trust you.
Yeah.
Good, bad things can happen to good people. Yeah, it's like when a parent loses a child. There's no explaining. I mean, that's a whole other layer of grief, level of grief.
But the root of it is it's still grief. This is a different form of grief.
Yes.
Wow.
And knowing that it can take time to get through it, but there will be good days ahead. But the grief it lingered for a couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. How did you keep helping people when you're in grief yourself?
It was almost like a bit of an escape. Like it was like when I got to work, I put on my psychologist hat and it was a role, and I was counselling people who were going through far worse things than what I was going through, like kids going through cancer treatment and mums who'd lost their babies. So, I mean, gosh, me losing an ex-husband who I was probably better off
without.
Like it just put things in perspective.
Wow.
And it helped me because when you take your focus off yourself and put it on someone else and giving out to someone else, it actually probably helped me through my grief.
Which is, and at varying degrees, of course, everyone's got their own stuff, but it is true. I think sometimes serving, you said even I went and just served in a different area of, like you just try to do the next right thing, not as an avoidance or escape, but as a place to maybe take your mind off some stuff.
Yeah, I've just got to keep moving forward.
Which is powerful. So then go on. No,
I was just going to say work gave me a sense of purpose. And I think for a lot of people, when they're in grief, like having a sense of purpose, because there can be this hopelessness that comes when you're going through grief and I can't see anything shifting. But I think when you create a sense of purpose in your life, whether that's your kids, your work, church, that actually helps you through that grief.
So you come here and you're still moving forward. Were you confident by the time you got to America? How were you feeling?
Yeah, so it was 5 years on, so I felt like I'd heard a lot from the divorce. And I travelled around Europe. I mean, life was good. Like I kind of got to about 31 or 2 and thought, I haven't had a lot of fun in my life. Like I've been very serious, Bible college and then, clinical psychologist, private practice, doing my doctorate. So I was like, I just want to go and travel and have fun, like within boundaries. So moved to America, sold everything I owned.
She's letting everyone know that is within a Christian, ethical and moral context. Okay, go on, yes.
And then moved to California and joined the team with A21 as Global Director of Aftercare. So that was a huge shift for me. Also a change in identity too. So even though I was still a psychologist, it was like, wow, no one knows me here. And sort of I was rebuilding again, which was amazing. But it was just quite a shift in identity as well for me.
Which is awesome. And I just want to drop in for a second because you did something really significant with the child soldiers from Uganda, didn't you? What was the program?
Okay. So my ex-boss, Dr. Robbie Sondriger, in 2006 wrote a program called Empower, which is a trauma rehabilitation program and emotional resiliency program that he wrote originally for child soldiers and victims of war in northern Uganda. So there's been about 200,000 people go through that program since that was written. It's now on its 4th or 5th version, and so A21 actually uses that. A21 was using Empower back when I was still in private practice. I think A21 started using it in 2012.
Because the program is that good? Is that why?
It's a program on emotional resiliency. It's 13 sessions, and it's written so like a 15-year-old boy in northern Uganda could understand it. So it's more simple and practical in its strategies and its language. And it's a program that's really effective too with our survivors. So our team in Greece, for example, loves using Empower because we have a lot of survivors. We've had survivors from over 70 nations in our
As in 70?
70 in Greece. From African nations, European, Middle East. So they find that it's a really helpful program to use.
That is awesome. And so what, did you have to like educate yourself into the human trafficking space or what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm 7 years old.
I'm finding this out in real time, everyone.
I can be real now, but Chris, I had so much imposter syndrome. I can treat depression and anxiety, but human trafficking, okay, what's the actual definition? I remember having panic, going to bed feeling so anxious, what am I doing? I've entered this whole new world. I'm in America. I know no one. I'm away from my family and friends. And it was challenging. It probably took me 12 months to settle in. For sure. Learn the team, learn the systems, and get my head around things.
And what have you seen, in your all these years, you've had to grow as a leader as well. I mean, you led in Queensland, but you are leading internationally now. I mean, there's, so you've got different cultures, different languages, different, I mean, I know when we have our global team meetings, you've got 15 countries represented, 19 offices. It's got its own dynamic, let alone dealing with survivors. I mean, just even our own team dynamics. How has all that played out for you?
Look, I think it probably took about 12 months to build trust. So for any new leader, it can take a while, especially when there's been a great leader before you. It's like, who's this person? And so I think just consistently showing up with warmth and people skills and genuine care for the staff, but then also showing competence and proficiency.
For sure.
So I think that combination, it builds trust. And so we've got aftercare offices in 8 locations in 6 countries. So we're in Bulgaria, Cambodia, Greece, South Africa, Thailand, and in the US as well. And so it's an amazing team. We've got 45 aftercare staff.
Wow.
It's just a special team. Most of them are social workers. They work so hard. Very hard.
I was with some of our Cambodian team. That's stellar. Oh, everyone is stellar, but I mean, there's just something, and because that nation itself has gone through so much trauma with the genocide, to even find qualified social workers and
We've got psychologists on staff there.
It's huge, isn't it?
Doing their masters or have their masters. Yeah, it's such an impressive team.
Which I love. In general. So with you, what is your goal? What do you try to do with your global team? How do you build unity?
Team, so the unity is more within the teams within the countries. Right. But my goal is to create the most excellent aftercare program for survivors because I feel like they deserve that after having been through so much horrific trauma. They deserve the best. So evidence-based programs, it's all ethical. But our team, so here's an example of unity. Yesterday, we call it a Global Restore Team Hangout. So we do this every few months. It's optional to attend, and it's where our teams across the different locations can get together and just meet our different aftercare staff. So Cambodia hosted it yesterday, and we just did a Q&A about how aftercare functions in Cambodia. So even though we have the same programs across our different locations, they look very differently in each location. So in Cambodia, we're working with a lot of minor survivors. In our freedom centres, which is our drop-in day centres for survivors, it's filled with a lot of children and teenagers. So they talked about that, the foster care programs that we run, the survivor outings and getaways that we do. And then they did their Khmer traditional dance, which was beautiful in their costumes. So
really?
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. So that was a way of bringing unity with our teams. We've had South Africa do it. We had our team in North Carolina. They taught the Cupid Shuffle, quite a different
How hilarious.
different culture.
I need to see these.
So it's a great way of just showing our culture. In Greece, one of our team did some Greek cooking and taught us how to cook. So that's one way that we've built a bit of unity with just getting to know each other.
And I saw when I was in Cambodia and we were opening our child advocacy centre, the traditional dancing was happening because all the government officials were there. It's just breathtaking.
It's beautiful.
So delicate and also, I mean, I'm like a bull in a china shop.
Oh,
I'm like,
I can't dance.
Nothing. No, me either. It was like not happening. It was like serious. But what I do love is I love everything. Okay, I'm biased and I can be biased because I'm not doing it. Our team is phenomenal. Right. But truly, our child advocacy centres are breathtaking. I just want you to talk a little bit about that and the rationale behind that for just anyone listening as we wrap up, because I think they're amazing. Am I right that they're amazing?
Yeah, the child advocacy centres, the freedom centres, like all of them are amazing. So I'll explain the child advocacy centres first. So that's where we do forensic interviews with child victims of exploitation. So the kids come in and they're in a safe place to do the forensic interview, and the interview is recorded. It's conducted by a social worker on team who's trained in forensic interviews, but in the next room over, there's law enforcement are there and they're feeding questions, they're recording it. Now, the purpose behind this is so that child is not having to retell their trauma story over and over again to like 7 different people, because that's re-traumatizing for them. And so that's our child advocacy centres. We have them in Cambodia and in Thailand, but they are all over the world.
Yes,
the A21 operates those.
But I just also want to say, it is a game changer, isn't it, for a child?
Oh, definitely.
Like, literally, yeah. To me, that is one of the most powerful things that we could do.
Because when people go through abuse or trauma, one of the symptoms of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is avoidance of wanting to think or talk about the trauma.
Totally.
So to then make someone, especially a child who's gone through sexual exploitation, like have to retell their story, that's so challenging for them. So that's been so effective. We are seeing so many court victories this year in Cambodia. We've had 27 this year in Cambodia.
You're going to get that 27. Come on, somebody.
It's amazing. So traffickers in prison for 20 plus years. It's amazing. And then our freedom centres, we have 6 freedom centres around the world. So they're drop-in day centres for survivors to come in and build community, meet with their caseworkers, work on their goals, build life skills. They do cooking classes, they do fitness classes. We've got grab and go rooms where they can come and get clothes and fresh products like toiletries and stuff. It's all brand new because we really put value and honour on our survivors and want to restore their dignity.
Amen. I love them so much. I love hanging out. And we're way out of time because I love talking to you, but people have to know your redemption story because, we've come out of that and so you lived in California for a while. So you had your vibes of ocean, at least. You were close to the ocean.
Yes, it was close to the ocean. That was beautiful. Yeah. And then I actually went through an engagement breakup in California.
I remember.
Chris, you remember?
Yes.
February 2020, before COVID. And then COVID struck. And so I thought, okay, I know how to do a breakup. And I've got a trip to Greece and South Africa coming up, so I'm going to be busy. I was probably avoidant problem focus coping. But then COVID hit and I'm stuck in my apartment, can't even go to the beach, alone with my thoughts and my grief. Chris, it was so awesome. Bad. I think I was texting Nick every week.
Literally.
Nick, when can we go back to the office? He did get a little worried about me, I think.
I know, he did. And unfortunately, if you were in Texas or Florida, it might have been different, but you were also in California, so it was very strict. Yes, okay.
So then I think I rang Nick one day. I was like, hey, Nick, I think I need to move to Texas and join the office. So we had, for context, had plans of moving our global support office to Texas. I had planned on staying in California.
Yes, you did.
But then life changed my plans, and I'm so thrilled. So I was able to move here and bought and renovated a house by myself, which that was a redemption for me because my house back in Australia had been sold on when my ex-husband had left. So I'd lost that. And I'm so glad I was able to do that. It was just a me and God thing while I was single. And then last year, 12 months ago, I remarried. He's a true Southern gentleman. I became a stepmom, and he's worth the pain.
Yes. We so love you and appreciate you so much.
I love you, Chris. Yeah.
You're the best.
Thank you.
We'll chat again, and I'm going to go into more detail on A21 down the track.
Amazing. Thank you.
Wow, I love this conversation so much. Dr. Rhiannon's details are listed and tagged in the description of this episode so that you can keep up with her and connect further. And to every one of you, our podcast listeners, I love you so much and I really appreciate you and thank you for joining us on the Life and Leadership Podcast. I'll see you back here next week.
A special thanks to Trevecca Nazarene University's School of Leadership and Interdisciplinary Studies for sponsoring our podcast. Find your calling and advance your career with a degree that brings your future into focus. Learn more at trevecca.edu/Christine.
Access more